Your position here is terminated, effective. Immediately, Donald Higgins declared, his finger pointed directly at my chest like a weapon. His voice cut through the conference room with surgical precision as 30 pairs of eyes shifted uncomfortably in my direction. I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands, suddenly ice cold, gripped the leather portfolio I had prepared for this quarterly meeting, filled with charts documenting our territory's record-breaking growth. 8 years, he continued, pacing slowly around the polished conference table. And what have we really gained from your contributions? The pause before the last word dripped with contempt. The meeting had begun normally, with the usual small talk floating around as everyone settled in. Then Donald had moved to the presentation screen, bypassing the agenda entirely, and locked his gaze on me. "We need someone who delivers actual results," he announced to the room. "Someone innovative. Someone who does not ride on others' successes." My mind raced through the previous quarter's numbers. My territories had outperformed every other division by 30%. The client retention rate had reached its highest point in company history. 4 major accounts that had been considered untouchable had signed under my guidance. "I do not understand," I managed, my voice embarrassingly small in the cavernous room. "My territories are your territories." Donald's eyebrows arched as several executives exchanged glances. "That is precisely the problem, isn't it? The collaborative approach I implemented is what turned those numbers around. Your resistance to the new framework has become problematic." My throat closed as I recognized the narrative he was constructing. The collaborative approach he referenced had been my creation entirely, a restructuring I designed after identifying critical gaps in our client engagement model. "But the framework was Ronald," he interrupted. "This is not the time for debate. The decision has been made at the highest levels. We need forward-thinking leadership, not outdated methodologies." My vision narrowed as 30 colleagues, people I had worked alongside for years, watched in silence. No one spoke, no one objected. The room felt suddenly vast and cold. "Be gone by noon," Donald concluded. "Human resources will assist with your exit paperwork." I sat paralyzed as my career collapsed. 8 years of 80-hour weeks culminated in this public execution. Then a chair scraped against the floor. "One moment, please." The voice came from the far end of the table where the junior staff typically sat. Chloe Barlow, my intern for the past 4 months, stood with her laptop. At 28, her gaze was steady despite the tremor in her hands. "This is not appropriate, Chloe," Donald said, dismissing her with a flick of his wrist. "Return to your seat." But Chloe was already moving forward, her steps deliberate as she approached the head of the table. "Everyone should see this first," she said, placing her laptop down and turning the screen toward Donald. "It is relevant to this discussion." Donald leaned forward, annoyance etched across his features until he saw what was on the screen. His expression shifted so dramatically, it was as if someone had drained all color from his face. He stumbled back a half step, his hand bracing against the table for support. Chloe looked directly at him and spoke 5 words that caused the entire room to freeze. "She is standing right behind you." Donald spun around so quickly he nearly lost his balance. There, filling the doorway, stood Martha Kingsley, the legendary industry pioneer whose visit was not scheduled until the following week. Her silver hair was pulled back in her signature bun, her penetrating gaze taking in the scene. Everyone recognized her instantly. Martha had transformed our industry over 3 decades, building an empire from nothing, and she had just witnessed my execution. "Interesting timing," Martha said, her voice surprisingly soft. "I specifically came early to meet the innovator behind your company's remarkable territory transformation." Her eyes moved deliberately from Donald to me, then back again. "It appears I have arrived at a pivotal moment." The silence that followed stretched like an eternity, with 32 people barely breathing as we waited for what would happen next. "My name is Ron Vance. I grew up in a small town where expectations were modest. My father ran the local farm supplies store, my mother taught middle school, and life followed predictable patterns until I won a state business competition my senior year of high school. That unexpected victory opened doors to a university education I otherwise could not have afforded. I studied business strategy, graduating at the top of my class while working 3 jobs. Those years taught me to recognize patterns. After graduation, I joined a mid-sized company with big ambitions but outdated approaches. I started in the lowest position, watching and identifying inefficiencies. By my third year, I developed an alternative strategy for client engagement that addressed critical gaps. My direct supervisor, impressed by my analysis, allowed me to test my approach with our smallest, most challenging territory. Within 8 months, that territory's performance had increased by 48%. Within 12 months, it led all other divisions. My framework became the template for other territories. That was when Donald first noticed me. As Executive Vice President of Client Relations, he recognized a rising star. He became my mentor, showcasing my work to senior leadership, inviting me to high-level strategy meetings, and positioning me for advancement. "You have something special, Ron," he told me during one of our weekly coffee meetings. "You see connections others miss. This company needs that perspective." For 4 years, we worked as an effective team. I developed strategies, and he provided the platform for implementation. My territories consistently outperformed projections. Clients requested me specifically for their accounts. My future seemed limitless. Then everything changed. The catalyst was an industry conference in Denver last spring. I presented our territory transformation strategy to a packed room, explaining the personalized framework I had developed. Afterward, several people approached with questions, including an elegant silver-haired woman who asked particularly insightful questions about my methodology. "Your approach is refreshingly client-centered," she commented before handing me her card. It was Martha Kingsley, founder of Kingsley International. My hands trembled as I slipped the card into my pocket. When I returned to the office the following Monday, I shared the encounter with Donald, whose reaction surprised me. "Martha Kingsley spoke to you?" he asked. "What did you say to Martha?" "Just an overview of the framework," I explained, confused by his intensity. "Next time, direct those inquiries to me," he said. "As Executive Vice President, I should handle communications with industry leaders." Later that week, I received an email from Martha's Chief of Staff, requesting a follow-up conversation. I forwarded the email to Donald. He responded immediately, writing that he would handle this, and that I should focus on my territories. 3 days later, I discovered Donald had scheduled a video call with Martha without including me. When I asked about it, he explained it was standard procedure, but she asked specifically about my framework. I pointed out. "Your framework?" His tone shifted. "Ron, you have done excellent work implementing our company's strategic vision, but let us be clear about ownership here." That conversation marked the beginning of the shift. Suddenly, my strategies were described as our executive approach. Donald joined my client calls, interjecting himself. During presentations, he positioned himself as the authority, claiming credit when clients praised the strategy. By the third time, I recognized the pattern, but struggled to address it without appearing defensive. Then came the account reassigns. First, one major client, then another, transferred from my oversight to cross-functional teams that reported directly to Donald. The explanation was always the same: strategic alignment for optimal client outcomes. With each transfer, my performance metrics suffered. Territories I had transformed were no longer counted in my results. New performance standards appeared that emphasized areas outside my reassigned responsibilities. I might have doubted my own perception if not for Chloe. The intern had joined us 4 months earlier. She was quiet and observant, assigned to both me and Donald. "He is systematically pushing you out," she whispered during a lunch break 8 weeks ago. "I have been organizing his files. He is taking your most successful accounts, then changing how success is measured to make you look ineffective." "That cannot be right," I said, though the pit in my stomach suggested otherwise. Chloe looked at me with unexpected intensity. "Until you became a threat," she said, "until Martha Kingsley showed interest in your work, specifically." That afternoon, I accessed the shared calendar and discovered something that confirmed my worst fears. Martha Kingsley was scheduled to visit our offices in 4 weeks. The calendar entry created by Donald noted a presentation of the territory transformation strategy and client retention framework, my strategy, with my name nowhere in the meeting notes. I confronted him that same day. "I saw Martha Kingsley is visiting," I said. "I would like to prepare the presentation on my framework." "That will not be necessary," he replied, barely glancing up from his computer. "I will handle the presentation." "But it is my framework," I said, the words falling between us like stones. "I developed it, tested it, and refined it over 5 years." Finally, he looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Did you develop it using company resources during company time, with company data?" "Yes," I admitted. "Then it is company intellectual property," he interrupted. "This presentation requires executive positioning." "You are taking credit for my work," I said plainly. His expression hardened. "That is an inappropriate accusation. In fact, I have been reviewing your recent performance metrics, and there are troubling patterns emerging. Because you have reassigned my successful accounts and changed the measurement criteria," I countered. "This defensive attitude is exactly the problem," he sighed. "Perhaps we should discuss your future here more broadly. Your approaches are becoming outdated, and your client relationships are not delivering the results we require." I left in a daze. Over the next 3 weeks, the isolation intensified. My access to data was restricted, and my projects were reassigned. The morning of the quarterly meeting, the day Donald chose for my public dismissal, began like any other. I arrived early, prepared my presentation materials, and reviewed my territory numbers one last time. Despite the targeted reassignments, my remaining accounts still showed significant growth. I believed, naively perhaps, that facts would protect me, that 8 years of documented successes would shield me from whatever Donald was planning. I was wrong. As I sat in that conference room, publicly labeled a failure before colleagues who knew better but said nothing, I thought my career was finished. The humiliation burned through me like acid, rendering me temporarily mute, unable to defend myself against the calculated dismantling of my professional reputation. Then Chloe stood up with her laptop, and then she spoke those 5 words that made Donald's face go white. "She is standing right behind you," and there was Martha Kingsley watching it all unfold. I specifically requested to meet with Ron Vance, Martha said, entering the room fully now, her assistant following with a leather portfolio. "I was told he would be presenting the territory transformation framework he discussed at the Denver conference." Donald's recovery was impressively quick. His spine straightened as he stepped forward with an extended hand. "Miss Kingsley, we were not expecting you until next week. What a delightful surprise." "I was just discussing some necessary organizational changes with the team." Martha ignored his outstretched hand, her gaze fixed on me instead. "Mr. Vance, I have reviewed the materials you shared after our Denver conversation. Your approach to client-centered territory development is precisely what I have been seeking to implement across my own organizations." The room had gone completely still. 30 colleagues held their breath as Donald's carefully constructed narrative began to crumble. "There seems to be some confusion," Donald interjected, his voice tight. "The framework Miss Kingsley is referring to was developed under my executive direction. Ron merely implemented certain elements." "That is not what my records indicate," Martha interrupted, nodding to her assistant, who produced several documents from the portfolio. "I have copies of the original strategy documents, complete with creation dates and revision history, all authored by Ron." As confusion washed over me, I caught Chloe's eye from across the room. The slight nod she gave me caused the first crack in my understanding of what was truly happening here. This was not a coincidence. This was not luck. This was something else entirely. As the room descended into uncomfortable silence, I watched Donald's confident facade begin to crack. "Perhaps," Martha suggested, her voice carrying effortlessly through the tension, "we should continue this discussion more privately." Donald nodded quickly, gesturing toward the door. "Of course, my office would be more appropriate." "Not your office," Martha interrupted. "A neutral location, and I would like Mr. Vance to join us, along with your assistant, who seems quite informed about the situation." "Chloe is just an intern," Donald dismissed with a wave of his hand. Nevertheless, Martha insisted I would like her present. 20 minutes later, we sat in the small conference room on the building's top floor, a space typically reserved for board meetings. Martha sat at the head of the table, Donald and I on opposite sides, and Chloe positioned beside me with her laptop open. "Let me be transparent about my purpose here," Martha began, her fingers steepled. 3 months ago, I began receiving communications about an innovative territory development framework. The strategy precisely addressed challenges my own company has been struggling with for years. As I explained in our previous discussions, Donald started, leaning forward eagerly. I was not speaking with you. Martha cut him off. The communications came from 3 former clients of yours who now work with my organization. All 3 independently cited Ron Vance as the architect of the approach that transformed their businesses. When I met Mr. Vance in Denver, Martha continued, his explanation of the framework confirmed everything I had heard. That is why I reached out to schedule this visit, to discuss potentially implementing his methodology across my organization, possibly even bringing him on board as a consultant. Donald's smile had gone rigid. While Ron has certainly contributed to our success, the framework you are referring to is company property, developed under my strategic direction. As I was explaining to the team before your arrival, we are making some organizational changes to better align with our future goals. By firing the creator of the very strategy that caught my attention, Martha observed dryly. Performance issues, Donald insisted. May I? Chloe interrupted, turning her laptop screen toward Martha. These are the original performance metrics for Mr. Vance's territories before the recent adjustments. Donald's head snapped toward Chloe, his expression darkening. Those are confidential internal documents. Accessing them without authorization is grounds for immediate termination. Chloe's face remained impassive. I have authorization. As Mr. Vance's assigned analytics support, I have legitimate access to all historical performance data. You were reassigned to my office 3 weeks ago, Donald countered. Partially reassigned, Chloe corrected. I maintained my original access permissions. Nothing I have accessed falls outside my authorized scope. Something in Chloe's calm precision gave me pause. The timid intern who had watched silently from corners now faced down an executive without flinching. Who was this woman, really? Martha studied the screen, scrolling through what appeared to be years of performance data. Fascinating. According to these records, territories under Mr. Vance's direct management consistently outperformed all others by significant margins until approximately 7 weeks ago, when several key accounts were suddenly reassigned. Strategic realignment, Donald insisted. And coincidentally, Chloe added, pulling up another document, these reassignments began precisely 3 days after Ms. Kingsley's office first contacted the company about Mr. Vance's framework. The implication hung in the air like smoke. Martha turned her penetrating gaze to Donald, who had begun to sweat visibly at his temples. It appears, Martha said carefully, that I have interrupted quite an orchestrated scenario. This is being grossly mischaracterized, Donald protested, his voice strained. These are internal matters that directly impact my interest in your company's approach. Martha finished for him. I came here specifically to meet the innovator behind a strategy I consider revolutionary. Instead, I witnessed that person's public termination by someone now claiming credit for their work. Mr. Vance, I would like to continue our discussion about your framework without interference. Would tomorrow morning be convenient? My hotel at 10 o'clock? Before I could answer, Donald stood abruptly. This is highly irregular. Any discussions about company methodologies must include executive leadership. Mr. Higgins, Martha said, using his name for the first time, I believe Mr. Vance's employment status was just terminated in front of 30 witnesses. Unless that decision has been reversed, he is free to discuss his expertise with whomever he chooses. The trap was elegant in its simplicity. If Donald rescinded my termination, he would have to explain to leadership why he had attempted to fire a valuable employee. If he maintained it, he would lose control over Martha's interest in my framework. There may have been a misunderstanding, he said finally, visibly calculating his options. Perhaps we should postpone any definitive decisions about Mr. Vance's position until after a more thorough performance review. How generous, Martha remarked, her tone making it clear she recognized the transparent maneuver. Mr. Vance, my offer stands regardless of your employment status here. Thank you, I said, finding my voice at last. I would be happy to meet tomorrow. As the meeting concluded, Martha departed with her assistant, leaving the 3 of us in a silence charged with unspoken threats. Donald's eyes had gone cold, any pretense of mentorship vanished. This is not over, he said quietly. You have made a serious miscalculation. He left without another word. I turned to Chloe, seeing her clearly for the first time. Who are you really? I asked. And what just happened? Chloe closed her laptop, her movements deliberate and controlled. I am exactly who I said I am, your intern, but perhaps with a more specific purpose than you realized. You engineered this entire scenario, I said, the pieces falling into place. Martha's early arrival, the documentation, the timing. Not entirely, she said with a slight smile. I simply created the opportunity for truth to emerge at the right moment. Why? You have been here 4 months. You barely know me. Chloe studied me for a long moment. Do you remember Paige Barlow? The name struck me like a physical blow. Paige Barlow from the Chicago territory. Chloe nodded. My older sister. My mind flashed to Paige. Brilliant, driven, with the same observant eyes. She had been part of my team 2 years ago, one of my most promising territory managers. Until Donald forced her out, I said, the memories surfacing painfully. After she challenged him about taking credit for the Northwestern strategy she developed. She was systematically isolated, her successes attributed to others, and her failures magnified, Chloe said, her voice steady despite the emotion behind her eyes. She trusted the system to recognize her contributions. By the time she realized what was happening, it was too late. Her reputation was damaged beyond repair. She is working at our parents' grocery store now, Chloe continued, her finance degree collecting dust while she stocks shelves. The depression nearly broke her spirit. Guilt washed over me. I tried to help her, Chloe. I really did. I know, Chloe said. Paige told me you were the only one who supported her in that difficult time. That is why I requested placement specifically with you when I applied for the internship program. To get justice and perhaps prevention. Paige was his first victim I knew personally. You would not have been the last. But how did you get those documents to Martha? I observed, Chloe said simply, the same way you do. Patterns reveal intentions, especially when someone believes no one is watching. Chloe's phone buzzed with a text message. We should leave separately, she advised. Donald is meeting with the leadership team, attempting to control the narrative. Prepare for your meeting with Martha and do not trust anyone at the company right now. The next 18 hours passed in a blur. I prepared for my meeting with Martha. My phone remained silent, with no calls from colleagues or human resources. At 10 o'clock the following morning, I met Chloe at Martha's hotel. She led me to a private suite that had been transformed into a meeting space. Martha greeted me, standing to shake my hand. Thank you for coming. We have much to discuss. I presented my framework in detail. Martha and her team asked insightful questions. It was a respectful, professional exchange, with no interruptions or attempts to claim my ideas. This is precisely what we need, Martha concluded. Your approach addresses the exact challenges we have been facing. I would like to offer you a position heading our client strategy division. You would have full authority to implement your framework across all our territories with appropriate attribution and double your current salary. The offer was beyond anything I could have expected. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Donna, the human resources director. I hesitated, looking at Martha. You should take that, she advised. I stepped into the adjoining room and answered. Ron, this is Donna. I am calling regarding yesterday's incident. The executive team has reviewed the situation. We have placed Donald on administrative leave, pending an investigation into certain allegations that have come to light. And my position? That is what the meeting will address, Donna replied. But I have been authorized to inform you that the termination has been rescinded. The company is prepared to offer you a significant promotion to retain your services. What time is the meeting? I asked. 4 o'clock, the entire executive leadership team will be present. I will be there, I promised, returning to the main room. They have placed Donald on leave and want to meet about offering me a promotion, I explained to Martha and Chloe. It seems convenient indeed, Martha agreed, almost as if they have suddenly recognized your value now that another option has appeared. Chloe looked up from her laptop. They received notification of Martha's job offer to you 50 minutes ago, Chloe explained. An anonymous email was sent to the entire executive team. You are working together, I realized. This is a rebalancing of scales, Martha corrected, just as they were tipped against Paige Barlow and others. 9 that we have confirmed, Chloe added. all women credited with innovations that Donald subsequently claimed before pushing them out. "And you have been tracking this pattern?" I asked Martha. It was only after Chloe contacted me with evidence that I've recognized the broader implications, she admitted. After Denver, Chloe confirmed, "When I saw Donald beginning the same pattern with you that destroyed my sister's career." "Why go through this elaborate scenario?" I asked. "Why not just report Donald's behavior?" "Because men like Donald rarely leave evidence that traditional channels can address," Martha explained. "They operate in gray areas. They control narratives. By the time conventional processes catch up, careers have been destroyed." "So, what happens now?" I asked. "Do I take your job offer or the company's promotion?" Martha leaned back. "That depends on what you want, Ron. Justice, advancement, vindication, or something else entirely." I considered the question carefully. 8 years of my life had gone into building my career at the company. "I want to ensure this does not happen to anyone else," I said. "Not just at our company, but anywhere Donald might go next." "That," Martha said, "is exactly what we hoped you would say." "We have been gathering evidence for months," Chloe explained, opening a folder on her laptop, showing a timeline of 9 women over 7 years. "The first name on that timeline is Evelyn Pierce, who worked under Donald at his previous company," Martha said. "She took her own life 4 years after leaving." Her journals detailed how Donald systematically dismantled her confidence and stole her innovations. "I promised her family I would watch for such patterns. When Chloe approached me, I saw the opportunity to stop him." "So, what is the plan for the meeting at 4 o'clock?" "That depends," Martha said. "This morning, 3 of our largest clients received proof that their account strategies were your creation and requested emergency meetings with the chief executive officer," Chloe said. Additionally, a journalist was sent documentation of Donald's intellectual property theft for a feature story next week. Most importantly, 3 former employees, including Paige, have engaged legal counsel. Their attorneys contacted your general counsel this morning, citing multiple violations of federal laws, including the WARN Act under 29 U.S.C. Section 2101 for retaliatory layoffs, breach of fiduciary duty, violations of federal copyright law under 17 U.S.C. Section 106, and a forged intellectual property assignment agreement which, under California Penal Code, Section 449, is void ab initio, because Donald had forged Paige's signature to claim ownership of her Northwestern strategy. The strategic pressure points were perfectly targeted. Clients, public relations, and legal exposure all activated simultaneously. The executive conference room fell silent as I entered precisely at 4 o'clock. 12 people sat around the table. CEO Harvey Gould gestured for me to sit. I placed my portfolio and Martha's sealed offer letter on the table. "Yes," Harvey acknowledged, looking at the letter. "There has been a misunderstanding. Donald's actions were not authorized." "And you placed him on leave?" "Pending investigation," Donna confirmed. Harvey leaned forward. "We are offering you a promotion to senior director, reporting directly to me with a 50% salary increase." I slid my conditions across the table. They included full attribution, a review of Donald's performance evaluations over 7 years, and a mentorship program. "These are substantial requests," Harvey said. "They are requirements for my stay," I corrected. CFO Bryce objected to the resources. "It prevents losing valuable talent and avoids expensive lawsuits," I countered. Harvey agreed, accepting the terms. The next morning, Harvey called to accept all conditions. Martha supported my choice, noting that transforming culture requires working from within. Chloe also stayed, transitioning to a newly created position focused on analytics and attribution verification. Donald was permanently terminated. 3 days later, the company reached confidential settlements with Paige and the other former employees, providing financial support and positive references. Over the following months, I implemented my framework across all divisions. 8 months later, I presented our results showing territory realignment exceeded projections by 27%. The mentorship program supported 15 team members with 4 promotions. Afterward, Chloe showed me a Denver job listing where Donald was interviewing. "They will receive detailed documentation of his behavior by this evening," she said. "You are still monitoring him," I observed. "Justice is not a single action," she replied. Martha provides resources, but monitoring is my responsibility until he can no longer harm others. As she reached the door, I asked if it was worth it. Ask me that when you meet Nora Cole, she said. She is interviewing for our strategy position, a brilliant innovator forced out by a supervisor who claimed her work. Different predator. Same pattern, Chloe added. As she left, I reflected on my transformation from humiliation to leadership. Culture was changing, and attribution protocols ensured innovations were traced to their creators. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. Denver company just pulled the strategy director listing. Board chair requesting emergency meeting. I smiled. The most fitting revenge was not a single dramatic moment, but the quiet, relentless dismantling of the conditions that allowed Donald to thrive. Chloe had shown me how to transform an individual victory into systemic change. She had given me something far more valuable than revenge, a purpose.